Welcome to Concept of Being the podcast, where the intention is well, but let's be for real. Life gets a little chaotic, and so do we. And that's totally fine. It's fine. You're fine. I'm fine. We're literally fine. And we're all about finding the balance while staying honest with health, wellness, and all the juicy topics that matter. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Concept of Being the podcast where the intention is well. My name is Jade, and I'll be your host for today's episode. And today's episode is all about the concept of Reiki. And I'm absolutely buzzing because we're joined by Maria Dominique Lopez, a certified Reiki master and trauma-informed life coach who's bringing energy healing into corporate wellness. Maria is also a decolonization educator and founder of Ascending Arts, where she offers one of the only decolonized Reiki master certification programs in the country. She's here to share with us the impact that Reiki can have on well-being and how it's not just a woo-woo practice. Welcome, Maria. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you, Jade. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm so excited for our chat. But before we get into Reiki, do we want to kick it off with a moment?
Yes. So I just want to have a moment of gratitude.
Yes.
I'm going to try not to get too hormonally weepy here. But
Get into it.
38 weeks pregnant, and so I'm just about to meet my first child in about 2 weeks. And I'm
Congratulations.
very excited. So that's one thing I'm really just deeply grateful for. He's healthy, he's happy, he's growing. I'm great. The pregnancy's been easy, painless. I mean, I am beyond blessed in this. That's my little gratitude moment for today.
I love that, and congratulations.
Sure.
I'll share a gratitude moment as well. So I want to express gratitude for my friends, my families, and all the strangers that I have come by in the last couple of weeks. I am going abroad and I have received so much support from everyone, just being like, girl, this is the time of your life. Go do the thing. Don't be scared. So I am so grateful for everyone just supporting me in this next chapter of my life. So thank you, everyone. And I'm so grateful. And thank you for sharing your gratitude moment with me, Maria.
My pleasure. And I am so excited for you. I feel like traveling is one of the best teachers that we can ever encounter. And I'm just so excited for your world to be expanded and opened in this way. This is so great.
Thank you. I'm grateful for you, Maria. I'm grateful that you're here. I'm grateful for our chat that we're going to have. I'm so excited to learn about Reiki. So let's get into it.
Okay.
First, what is Reiki for people that don't know what Reiki is?
Yeah, so Reiki is a shamanic, Shinto-based, ancient Japanese quantum healing practice that has existed for thousands of years and over time has been through this process of westernization and colonization that now ends with what we understand Reiki to be now, which is an energy healing practice whereby a practitioner places hands on the recipient who is receiving Reiki and funnels quantum energy that is basically in everyone and in everything back into that person to help balance their energy centers and to create a better energetic alignment, essentially. So when I say quantum matter, this is very broad strokes of quantum mechanics, okay? I am not a quantum physicist. I don't think you are either. Maybe some of our listeners are, but essentially the broad strokes of the quantum mechanics behind this is that you and me and the screen that I'm looking at you on and my dog and oxygen molecules and everything in existence, every single thing in existence at the molecular level, at the quantum level, is made up of the exact same matter, just different conglomerations of that matter. So it's kind of like the Pando in Utah. Have you ever been there?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so the Pando is this enormous aspen forest. It's about 10,000 acres, 100,000 aspen trees. But it's actually considered the largest organism on Earth because it's not 100,000 aspen trees. It's one tree, all united by the same root system that spans 1,000 acres. Right, so kind of like that, quantum matter is our collective root system, meaning that at a quantum level, every single microcosm of existence is all part of the same organism. So all I'm doing is I'm funneling energy that lives in our organism through myself and into a recipient.
Got it. Okay, so that reminds me of like the theory of like oneness. Is that very similar to that?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think that the more we discover about quantum physics and the more we discover just generally about science, the more it proves the existence of a oneness and
Hmm.
a connection between all of us, whether you want to call that God or the universe or, spirit or source or whatever it is that you feel comfortable calling it, that oneness, that connection that connects not only every human, but every single thing in existence, everything, a rock, a remote control, that level of oneness is increasingly proven by science, which I just find uber fascinating.
Yeah. So why would a person seek out Reiki? Like, what would be the vibe where they're like, you know what? I really want to have Reiki done on me. Is that the proper way to say it? Done on me or like
Sure, or
done
I
for me? Okay.
some Reiki. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Why would someone want Reiki? There are a lot of reasons I have people come to me for Reiki. A lot of it has to do with relaxation. A lot of it has to do with the desire to remove stress. Reiki is interesting because we've been studying it now in the decolonization or excuse me, in the colonization process of Reiki. One of the first bits of the colonization of this really shamanic indigenous practice was to westernize it. And in the westernization process, that happened in about 1920, 1922, so about 100 years ago. In the westernization process, the father of Reiki, according to most Reiki healers who aren't part of a decolonized lineage, their understanding is that Reiki was created by this man named Mikao Usui. And he created Reiki Ryoho Usui, which means, translated from Japanese, Reiki in the style of Usui.
Okay.
And so when he created Reiki in 1920, 1922, which, and by created, when I do air quotes, what I mean is he repackaged it, he rebranded it, right? He rebranded it in this very Western way where it became a scientific method of study. And so we have about 100 years of scientific data now that we've been studying Reiki for and as a medicinal medical practice. That was part of the westernization of Reiki that Mikao was responsible for, was creating a medical practice out of Reiki. So there was a recent meta-analysis that was released maybe 2-3 years ago, and it was from every single study done on Reiki since the early 90s. And what they found is that Reiki has been scientifically proven to be more effective than the placebo effect, which is a huge deal,
Hmm.
in reducing anxiety, in increasing speed of healing time post surgery, in decreasing inflammation and thereby decreasing pain, physical pain from inflammation, improving sleep, increasing oxytocin and endorphin levels, rewiring the myelin lining, the myelin sheath on your nerve endings in your nervous system. I mean, there's so many benefits that we now have scientific evidence for because of the westernization and colonization of Reiki, which I find really interesting. So a lot of people come to me for pain management, stress reduction. Those are my two big ones. And then the other thing they come to me for is trauma healing, that for rewiring their nervous system and the trauma that is stored in the autonomic nervous system.
Okay, so many follow-up questions.
Okay.
But before we get into that, before we get into all of those questions, how did you get into Reiki?
Great question. So I was in a car accident
Okay.
and it was not severe. It was fine. I had a little bit of back pain. I was seeking out some treatment for that. I was going to a chiropractor and I was seeing an acupuncturist. And then my friend, who was a Reiki healer, her name is Jamie, she just offered me a few sessions. She was like, "Hey, do you want some Reiki?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. I don't know what it is. It sounds a little bit weird, but why not? We could try it." I was a skeptic, of course, but I really liked Jamie, so I just, went with it. And so she gave me probably about 2-3 weeks of Reiki sessions. And then I, at the time, was really into a meditative practice, very deeply into a meditative practice. And I went on a meditation retreat. And during that meditation retreat, I did a sacred medicine ceremony. And during that sacred medicine ceremony, my hands started to tingle and they started to glow. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm high. So
That'll do it. Yeah.
that's probably And then the glowing went away, which was cool, but the tingling didn't stop for about 3 months. And I thought, well, maybe it's just nerve damage because I just got in this car accident. I'm doing all of this stuff to repair my neck injury. Like maybe that's just, part of it. I have an injury and it's creating this weird tingling in my hands. But then every time I would touch someone who was in pain, their pain would go away. Even if it was just like, they were like, oh, I have the biggest headache. And I'd be like, I'm so sorry. And I'd put my hand on their arm. And they'd be like, whoa, it just went away. That was weird. That kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And so finally, after many months of that happening, I decided to ask Jamie. I was like, hey, do you think this tingly thing is Reiki? Do you think that's what this is? And she was like, well, it kind of sounds like it. Maybe you should take a class. So I went to go take a Reiki class, and this was in the fall of 2019. Yeah, it turned out it was. It turned out I had accidentally attuned myself to Reiki, which makes sense if you think about, again, if you're coming from a decolonized perspective of Reiki, the colonization process of Reiki in the westernization of it also involved the capitalization of it. And that meant that now we had teachers who were gatekeeping the knowledge in order to make money. And in reality, if we think about it, if Reiki is the ability to access quantum energy, which is in everyone and in everything, then doesn't it stand to reason that anyone can access and attune themselves to being able to funnel this energy? Yeah, of course it does. You just have to be on the right mindset, in the right place in your life, in the right openness, spiritually, intellectually, mentally, physically, to be able to attune yourself to these fine changes of energetic frequencies that are all around us. That's it. It's the thing you have to be open to. So I had accidentally attuned myself. I got certified to essentially legitimize the practice, and then I've been practicing ever since.
When you do Reiki on people, what does it feel like for the person? Do they feel the energy moving or does it hurt? How does it feel for them?
Great question. Everyone is different. And it not only depends on the person's openness and availability and like desire to feel, but it also depends on what's going on in their body and in their system. So, one of my first clients, he said that it felt like when I would place hands on him that he had a series of tight rubber bands in his body that ran the whole length of his body stretching horizontally. And then when I would put my hands on him, those rubber bands would loosen and he would feel all of them as I went through the body, just kind of loosen, which I thought was really interesting. Now, mind you, for those who are listening and who have never tried Reiki, Reiki is not massage. There's no manipulation of the soft tissue. So I'm not actually doing anything other than just placing hands, very still hands on your body, or even if you don't want me to touch you, hovering over your body, and then just funneling energy. So there's really no action coming from me, so to speak. And so to have someone have that visceral of a feeling every time I gave him Reiki was really interesting. Now, my partner, for example, every time I give him Reiki, he feels like waves of heat run through his body. And sometimes it's overwhelming for him. And he's like, you're burning me, stop. And I'm like, I'm burning away the illness, be okay.
Appreciate it.
Be grateful. And then there are some people who just, they don't feel anything physically during the process, but they feel deeply relaxed. A lot of people fall asleep. That's really common, very common. Actually, more often than not, people fall asleep on my table because it's just so relaxing. A lot of people feel tingling in their bodies, maybe some twitching, those kinds of things. All of that is super normal. When I receive Reiki, I always have these really expansive experiences where I'll feel the energy, the tingling running through my body. I'll feel lighter and instantaneously grounded. And then I just have all of these visions. It's really lovely.
Do people ever cry when they get Reiki done? Okay.
Yeah, it's super common. Release of tears is really common. Yawning and burping is really common.
Okay.
It's so funny. When I first started Reiki, or practicing Reiki rather, I was burping a lot, and I'm not really a burper. I don't really have like stomach issues or things like that. And
Hmm.
I asked my Reiki master, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I probably should have told you that when I certified you, but that's pretty normal. Yawning and burping is usually an indicator, as well as crying, of energetic blockages that are stuck in the body, leaving the body physically. So yeah, it's a nice kind of cathartic release for the body. And when you as a
Okay.
practitioner are burping or yawning a lot in session, it's usually because you're funneling and you're channeling that person's energy through you and then releasing it for them.
Okay, that makes sense. That's a different story for a different time, but that makes sense. So you can do this on behalf of other people, like you're getting rid of it out of your body.
Correct.
Okay, very cool. Okay, this makes sense. I did a whole thing in Peru and everything's starting to connect, but we'll talk about that after. It's fine. I have a question for you, or maybe I would like your thoughts on this. So, Reiki is often categorized as woo woo, and you mentioned before there's a lot of scientific proof to back this now of the benefits. What are your thoughts on Reiki being thought of as being woo woo?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question. It's so great. Well, the first thing that I want to say about this is from a decolonized perspective. And you mentioned at the beginning in my intro that I'm a decolonization educator. From a decolonized perspective, the term woo woo is actually considered pretty harmful to indigenous populations. And that is because essentially everything we in Western culture deem as woo woo is something that we cannot necessarily explain with science. And we as a Western culture are very comfortable with science and scientific evidence, although maybe less so these days in this political climate. But for the most part, we're a pretty scientifically based society in Western culture. And there are a lot of parts to indigenous education, indigenous stewardship, indigenous medicine, indigenous spirituality, all of these indigenous ways of life that we cannot explain with science, that either are like round peg square hole with our concept of what is Western and civilized, right? Remember that when colonizers ran through all of these indigenous populations in every single continent of the earth, the word they used was savage, right? They would name these indigenous people savages, or that there was something savage about their way of life because it wasn't structured and ordered in the way that they understood. And so the word woo woo is really intended to kind of make light, make fun of, infantilize, and diminish these really powerful indigenous ways of life that have kept our species alive for millennia longer than Western culture has even existed. And so, what I would say to people who think it's woo woo is that, um, yeah, I get it. I understand. Given our programming and given the lens of the context of the society we live in, right, it makes sense that you're going to have doubters. And I would say probably a good 80 to 85% of first time clients that I see are doubters. And then by the time they're done with their session, they're not doubters anymore. But it's something that really they come in a little skeptical, and that's okay. I expect it. I don't take offense to it. I think that healthy skepticism is great. I mean, asking ourselves questions instead of just blindly believing everything we see or hear is part of what I think it means to be a well-educated individual. But being open to trying new experiences, I think, is also necessary to have a really rich and storied experience as a human being. We do have a lot of science to back this up, to back up that Reiki works. We know that it works. We just don't know really why it works yet, right? And that is the very interesting thing. And this is where you kind of have to take a leap of faith. And all of us have to do that in certain ways. I mean, even quantum physics is now the most proven science on Earth, which means that there have been more studies and experiments done to the same conclusive evidence every time than chemistry, than biology, than physics, right? So we know for a scientific fact that we are living in a quantum universe and that we are all quantumly connected. Do we understand why that is or how that is? No, we know it is. We just don't know anything else about it. And quantum physics is a relatively young method of scientific study right now. So we don't have hundreds of years of evidence. We just have thousands and thousands and thousands of tests to back up our knowledge that it is. The rest we just take on faith that we'll understand someday.
Let's stick with the science route because I find it very interesting and I love that we're able to have this conversation about science. When we first started chatting, you mentioned the myelin shift or the myelin lining, right? What is that and how does Reiki impact the myelin lining?
Yeah, so myelin is a substance that is based out of brain cells that covers and coats the nervettes, the nerve endings of all of your nerves in your nervous system. And myelin is created as we grow. So you're creating a lot of it in infancy and young childhood. And then by the time you get to the teenage years and in the hormonal stages of like the different developments of growth, and you're still developing your prefrontal cortex until you're the age of 24. So your brain is still growing even until you're 24 years old. all of that is creating more and more myelin. And then once you become an adult, there are some significant drop offs of how you create myelin, but there are still some places in the body where myelin is still created brand new, or that it can recycle over and recreate itself. And myelin essentially is in charge of muscle memory. That's what it's in charge of. So, if you think about how easy it is for a child to learn a new language, and how hard it is for adults, or how easy it is for basically a child to learn anything, and how hard it is for us as adults. That's a combination of both muscle memory, myelin development, and neural plasticity, which is the brain's youth and its ability to learn new things.
Okay.
And so what Reiki does is it creates the ability, first of all, is it creates and increases neuroplasticity, which is that plasticky bit of the brain that allows us to learn new things. And it also can rewire the nervous system, reducing anything that is impacting the inability for myelin to grow and change on the myelin sheath. And because when we experience adverse life experiences like traumas, for example, our myelin lining decreases and our ability to change is less. Think of like all the old people
Okay.
who can't learn how to use a cell phone, even though you've explained it to them 15 times,
Got
right? It's hard for them to learn something new, not only because their brains aren't as plastic anymore, but it's hard for them to learn something new because they just don't want to, right? They have no desire. And a lot of that desire comes from a place of wanting to be better or wanting to be more present or wanting to be whatever. And when you experience a negative life experience, oftentimes we shut down the desire to expand and grow because we get caught in our cycle of this thing happened to me and this is who I am now. So Reiki, we don't again know how it happens or why it happens. We just know that it happens. When we are funneling quantum energy back into the body, it allows for those connections to increase and for the speed of myelin development and the speed of neuroplasticity to increase exponentially. It's almost as effective as meditating, which is a big deal. And I know a lot of people probably don't know this, the science behind meditation, but meditation has been scientifically proven to also increase myelin development and increase neuroplasticity. And in fact, doctors are now studying it as a potential cure for Alzheimer's and dementia. So they have done studies now that show that people who regularly meditate, and by regularly it can mean several times a week, doesn't have to mean every day, for long periods of time, say like 40 years, their brain youth, in other words, their neuroplasticity, is younger by a year. After studying them for 40 years, they have a brain that's 39 versus people who don't meditate regularly who have 80-year-old brains at the age of 40. It's wild.
It is wild.
Yeah.
Wow. I could see people using this as like a way in their professional life to just kind of like level up and make sure that they're still a little bit sharp, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of companies, I don't know that a lot of companies have Reiki inside of their typical wellness initiatives, but I think that it would be amazing. I think that it would be really great to include this along with like the gym memberships and the meditation apps that they give as a part of their wellness initiatives. Why would you consider Reiki as something that companies should include inside of their wellness strategies other than it can keep your brain sharp? What other benefits would a company see from bringing in Reiki?
Yeah, well, it's the same thing like like bringing in a masseuse into your corporate wellness space, right? Massage isn't going to necessarily keep your brain sharp, but it is going to help reduce stress. It's going to help fight burnout. It's going to help improve focus because relaxation always helps improve focus. Those kinds of things. One of the things that I have found in my corporate Reiki offerings, because I do go to corporations and I do offer Reiki to employees throughout the day in corporations, is that people leave after a 10-minute session feeling way more relaxed. That is the thing that I find most often that people tell me. I say, "How do you feel at the end of a session?" They go, "Wow, I feel so relaxed." And that is really important when you're in a high stress environment, when you've got quarterlies and deadlines and deliverables and all of these things that are weighing on your brain space. To be able to just take 10 minutes to realign all of your energy, your thoughts, your myelin, your cognitive processing skills, everything, to just refocus on the self for just 10 minutes even. It really makes a difference. And the cool thing about Reiki, again, we know that it works, we just don't know how or why, is that Reiki sticks around in the body for a while. And so even a 10-minute session can have lasting effects that last days. That to me is worth it, even just that. If I were somebody running a company and I were interested in corporate wellness initiatives for my employees, and I wanted to make sure that they felt thought of, that they felt cared for, that they felt prioritized, this is one of the things that I would choose to add 100%. Even if I wasn't a Reiki healer, it would be one of the things I would 100% choose to add. One of the things that I've found in team dynamics, particularly, is you know how it is with teams and people. Everyone's different. Everyone has their own opinion about how they want to get something done at work. They want to have it done this way, and then the team leader says, no, we're going to do it this way. And then they feel rejected. And then whatever their lens of their life experiences makes them get a little bit triggered or angry or whatever, and then they bring that into the workspace, and then they're snappy with Rebecca over in accounting, and then she like has a bad day, right? And it just goes on and on. But that is because when something pokes at us, when something triggers us a little bit, it activates our amygdala, and the amygdala is the fear center of your brain, right? It's the anxiety center, it's the aggression center of your brain. And when the amygdala is active, it's detecting threat, right? I mean, this is a very ancient evolutionary process here. It doesn't know that the threat that it's detecting is like, Jim said he didn't like my quarterly report.
Yeah.
So there's a threat here. You're being rejected by society, and therefore you might die, right? Because we're a communal species and we evolved in communities. And so being able to be in community and not be rejected is something that is fundamentally hardwired into our evolutionary DNA to try to achieve. That's why homogeny has become the name of the game, and uniqueness is something that we try not to do so much anymore these days. Now we're starting to get away from that trend, but it still feels scary. So when you're in this place where your amygdala is activated and you feel rejected, you feel scared, you feel a little bit angry or defensive, are you going to be doing your best cognitive processing? No, because your cognitive processing centers live in your prefrontal cortex. And those two places in your brain, they can't be on at the same time. They do not turn on at the same time, which means that everything you need to have executive functioning in your job, all of that lives in the prefrontal cortex. So decision making, focus, memory, working memory, cognitive processing, learning abilities, all the things you need to do your job effectively are now shut off because you got triggered by the fact that Jim over there doesn't like your quarterly report. Right? And how do you get back to the prefrontal cortex? Well, you get back there by getting to a place of calm and relaxation. Is it easy to get back to a place of calm and relaxation in the middle of your workday when you're triggered? No, it is not. So things like tools, meditation, Reiki, those things are really important. And I do go into corporations, not only just give Reiki to clients, but I also do offer workshops on this kind of thing, on how to get yourself back in the middle of the day and give people and employees tools that they can quickly access and utilize in the moment so that way they can get back on track and let go whatever it is that Jim said about their stupid quarterly report.
Yeah, I think that sounds really helpful because honestly, once someone ruined my day at work, like the day it's a wash. So I think that that's amazing that you're offering that and bringing that into companies. While you're bringing Reiki into companies, what misconceptions do you feel like you face about trying to introduce Reiki into the workplace?
That's a great question. I think that there are a few things. I think there's a lot of misconception that it's a spiritual practice. And in a way it is, especially when we're looking at the decolonized version of Reiki, where it was very much shamanic practice that was going on here. It was based in the Shinto religion, so animism. And so there is a lot of spirituality in the ancient form of Reiki that is more decolonized. And that's the form of Reiki that I generally practice and teach. But in the corporate wellness space, I really am utilizing it for its scientific benefits that we already discussed, we know are there. And so, generally speaking, I think a lot of people come in expecting me to balance all their chakras and then like wave some incense over them and maybe say a prayer and like do a shamanic cleansing. And while that is a possibility and that is a way to utilize Reiki, Reiki is really malleable in this really interesting way because quantum energy can't be controlled or bento boxed into a certain type of delivery system. And because of that, intention is very important in how we deliver Reiki. And if my intention is to deliver it in a way that's going to keep someone feeling like they're able to be in their professional state of mind, then that's what's going to happen.
So, final question before we move into our speed round game of myth or fact. What is your vision for Reiki in workplace wellness? Where do you see it going, being alongside other corporate wellness initiatives?
Well, it's tough. I think Reiki as an industry has a long way to go before it can be really taken seriously. Now, wonderfully, we have about 15% of US hospitals utilizing Reiki, doctors, surgeons, nurses utilizing Reiki before they go in for surgery, utilizing Reiki on patients. So it is gaining more traction as a serious medical practice, but there are some hindrances. Number one, there is no accreditation process for teaching Reiki, unlike traditional Chinese medicine, for example. Unlike, massage therapy, there are accreditation processes to getting educations in those forms of healing versus in Reiki. And because of the lack of accreditation, which is really important in Western culture, it's hard for Reiki to be taken seriously. So that's a big problem, I think, a hindrance that stands in the way. I do think that another hindrance that stands in the way is the lack of decolonized education. And the reason why I say that is because like I mentioned in the beginning, a big part of the way that Reiki has developed over the last 100 years in Western culture is the capitalization of this healing art form. And because of the capitalization, the way that we teach Reiki, generally speaking, is it's kind of like a factory. We just pump them out. So I take in a class of 30 people, I teach them Reiki in 2 days, and I send them out into the world. But I had been meditating for every single day for 45 minutes to an hour for 9 months before I attuned myself to the energy of Reiki and could actually feel it going through my hands. The idea that a teacher could teach you how to do what I did in 2 days in a weekend retreat at the Marriott for $500 is laughable. It's laughable. And so a big problem with the Reiki industry is that a lot of us aren't taken seriously because we don't have the education to be taken seriously. We've been educated, we have a certification, but that certification is essentially meaningless. Not only is it not accredited, but we actually haven't mastered the actual skill set of accessing this quantum energy and then funneling it into someone's body. Now, because of that, a lot of people don't feel anything. They don't feel better. They don't feel the difference. They don't feel anything when they go in to receive a Reiki session. And it just feels like it was like they laid down for an hour and had somebody wave their hands over them and play make-believe. Right? And that's when Reiki becomes a joke. So I think that where I see Reiki going in the future, to answer, to finally get around to answering your question, where I think I see Reiki going in the future, I hope, is the way of decolonization, the way of returning to the old ways of teaching something that requires this amount of level of mastery. You wouldn't give somebody a heart surgeon degree in 2 weeks or 2 days. You cannot do that for a Reiki healer as well. I may not be cutting into someone's body, but I am penetrating deep into their energy. I can mirror their energy in my own body. I can tell them what's going on, not only with their physical symptoms, but also with their emotional symptoms. I deal with people's trauma every day. It's a very vulnerable and sensitive thing. And I think it requires responsibility. And so in my hopeful heart, I'd like to see the Reiki industry go in that direction of a decolonized, more responsible way of offering education. So that way, those who are practicing Reiki masters and Reiki practitioners can give Reiki in a much more authentic and true way, right? Real way. Once that can happen, then where do I see Reiki going in the corporate world? Well, it's unstoppable. It's unending. The amount of good that Reiki can do for corporate workplaces is just undeniable. When you look at what corporate wellness initiatives have, the studies on corporate wellness initiatives have shown as results of what happened to their employees and what happens for them and their bottom line, it's a no-brainer. Employees feel more at ease at work. They feel more dedicated and loyal to their workplaces. They're more productive. They work harder. They have more creative ideas. They work better as a team. They have less burnout. They're less likely to leave their jobs. They're less likely to silent quit. There's all these other things, these benefits. But in general, companies that really invest money into corporate wellness see a serious reduction in their corporate turnover, in their employee turnover. And employee turnover is the most expensive, wasteful cost that every company endures. If you think about it, replacing one employee is tantamount to throwing $100,000 in the trash. Like, you just flush it down the toilet because you have the expense of having the HR team do a search. Then you have the expense of having them interview. Then you have sign-on bonuses. You have severance you have to pay to somebody who just left. There's, I mean, like, benefits, negotiations, all these things. And as the cost of living gets higher, and as people expect more money for the same job, when you've got somebody who's been in a job for forever and they're loyal, you can increase their pay with the cost of living. You've got somebody who's coming in brand new, they expect the world, and they will ask for it, and you will have to give it if you want that position filled. So it's important to think about long term as a company, how do I want to keep my employees? That should be, honestly, truly, if I were a company, that would be my only concern. It's like, how do I keep the good employees? Yeah, sure, we might get rid of the bad ones, but if there are people who are doing their jobs and they're doing them well, what do I got to do? What do I got to do to make sure this person just stays with me forever? Because it is way too wasteful to get rid of them or to put them in a position where they feel so underappreciated they leave. And if that means that I have to hire a Reiki healer to come in once a week and give them Reiki, fine, I will do that. Great, go ahead. It's worth it in the end. The percentage difference of amount of money spent as a corporation, if you do that versus nothing, it's not even comparable. So, yeah, that's where I see it going. I think when we can get out of our own way as an industry and really learn how to get serious about what it is that we're doing here and really take responsibility for the lives of the people that we're touching, then I think Reiki can do anything.
Yes. Well, I'm looking forward to Reiki being more normalized in the corporate wellness space. I think that it would be amazing, and I think it's very much needed. And thank you so much for your thoughtful answers to all of my questions. Are you ready to move into our speed round of myth or fact?
Yes, I'm so ready. I love that you do this. It's so
Okay.
creative.
So for new listeners, basically myth or fact, I'm just going to speed give Maria questions and she could either answer with yes or no, or if you want to, Maria, you can give like a little background or a description on why you answered the way that you did. Okay. All right. So first question, you need to believe in Reiki for it to work.
That is a myth and a fact. It's a yes and a no.
Okay.
So this one is going to require a little explanation. You don't need to believe in Reiki for it to work. And also, intention is everything. If you do believe in it, it is going to penetrate much deeper. And this is something that I've found in my clients who start with me who are skeptics and then end up becoming regulars who work with me for years, is that their sessions increasingly are more and more transformative for them because they are more and more open to the intention of receiving Reiki for their highest good and for their benefit. So, I've had clients who are skeptics and they come one time and they're like, well, I didn't really feel much, but I felt something. And then they come back and they're like, wow, this was so different than my first session. And I'm like, I know, it's because your intention is to be more open this time, right? That does make a difference. Don't ask me why, but I think that's probably where that Venn diagram of placebo effect and Reiki effect meet, is intention.
Reiki is tied to a specific religion or spiritual belief system.
Okay, yeah. This one's also myth and fact.
Okay.
So, just like I said earlier, Reiki is shamanic based. It's millennia, thousands and thousands and thousands of years old, based in Japan, based in the shamanic tradition of Shintoism, which is an animistic religion. So, yes, it is tied to a specific religion, or at least it was. Through the process of westernization and colonization, Reiki has been stripped of all of its spirituality and it is no longer associated with any spiritual or religious faith practice. So this is a yes and a no. If you're going to practice decolonized Reiki, you don't have to be a shamanic Shinto practitioner. I'm not, right? But I recognize and I honor the ancestors of that version of Reiki as part of my way of staying in right relationship with those indigenous ancestors. And I try to teach that to all of my students in my Reiki class that you mentioned in my bio. You said that I have one of the only decolonized Reiki healing courses in the country, and that is true. And so I really try to educate on the decolonization of Reiki and on the process of that colonization and westernization. But yes and no. Yes, it
Okay.
was. No, it's not now.
Got it. Okay. Question. So you brought up the training that you do. In order to be like, I fully realize I'm going off topic right now, but when someone wants to become a Reiki master, do they have to like have the gift for Reiki, or can anyone be a Reiki master?
That's such a good question. It's a nuanced question. So, does somebody have to have the gift for Reiki to be a Reiki master? I think anyone can have the gift for Reiki to be a Reiki master.
Okay.
I think the westernized version of Reiki that we teach now, well, not we as in me, because I don't teach that, but
Mhm.
the majority of the International Reiki Federation, the IRF, teaches is that anyone can be a Reiki master. You could be a Reiki master by next week if you pay me enough money and I give you a piece of paper. Right.
Okay.
And so for me, that's not the way I teach. My Reiki master certification program takes 14 months.
Hmm.
And it takes 14 months because I'm really teaching you how to master the energy. But anyone can be taught how to master the energy. It's not a calling. You don't have to have a talent for it. It's not like something that only a few can be chosen to do. It's not that. It's about dedication. It's about intention. It's about time put in. And that's about it. And if you do things in a way, if you learn these techniques in a way that keeps you practicing and keeps you open, anyone can be a Reiki, like truly be a Reiki master, not just a Reiki master on paper.
Thank you. Last myth or fact, Reiki is only about relaxation and has no impact on physical health.
Yeah, so that's a total myth, right? As we've already discussed.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Maria. I have learned so much and I just loved having this chat with you. Before we wrap this episode up, where can people follow you and learn so much more about Reiki and just keep up with everything that's going on with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Maria Dominique Lopez. If you go on LinkedIn and you type in your search Ascending Arts, you'll find me. You can find me on Instagram at Ascending Arts, TikTok at Ascending Arts. My TikTok is a little bit different than the rest of my social media, only because I don't know if you found it yet, but it's all about CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and the work that I do with trauma patients and trauma survivors. So we do a lot of talking about trauma on that channel, but it is very, very fun and very interesting, and lots of followers on there. So come join the conversation with us on TikTok. And then, of course, you can find me on Facebook. But basically, if you're following me on Instagram, you're going to get everything the same stuff on Facebook. So
Got it. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And I've had a great time and I've learned so much from you. Thank you for joining us. With that being said, we'll wrap this episode up. Thank you all for listening, and we hope that you have a good day or a good night, and we hope that you are well. Bye.